So this movie is much better than I expected. But to be fair, I didn't expect anything. But it's really interesting. Of course, the most impressive part, as you can see in the trailer footage, is the view of the ISS in front of the burning Earth. Which also answers a question that maybe you, but I definitely ask myself a lot, like what happens to the astronauts in case of an apocalypse? Like in a zombie apocalypse, what are they doing up there? How long can they survive? Can they come back? This is kinda on the same line, but not really. There's a bit of politics in there. So, in case you don't know, on the ISS there are astronauts from different nations. In the movie, it's portrayed like it's just Russians and Americans, which of course isn't true. But the main agencies that send people up there are NASA and the Russian equivalent, so they're kinda American and Russian aligned. Interestingly, from the 3 Russians in this movie, 2 are actually Russians, and 1 is from Denmark and has a name that I probably can't pronounce. Pilo Aspect, I don't know if that's correct, but he is best known for Euron Greyjoy from Game of Thrones, you know, the edgy pirate. And what I've learned, he also played in the Ghost in the Shell movie, he played Batu, which wasn't that good of a movie, but the character is awesome. And the lead actress, Ariana DeBose, is, and I didn't recognize her, the actress that won an Academy Award for West Side Story, which was not a good movie. I didn't like it at all, but anyway, here we are. And the Americans are all portrayed by Americans. So basically, the story is that everybody's on board on the ISS. 3 Russians, 3 Americans. Something happens on Earth. And both governments tell their people to take over the ISS. And then it turns into a real-life version of Among Us. But it is much better than that, even though that sounds kind of fun. They play a bit with the typical trope of the bad Russians and the good Americans, which turns out is not the case, which is nice. And without any spoilers, the star of the movie is the Euron Greyjoy actor. Pilo, I just call him Pilo, however you pronounce it. Because he is basically the most emotional person on this mission. He is the most conflicted. Well, he's second most conflicted, but one is more of a direct personal conflict, and he is more like globally conflicted. Because, and this is a scene that I really like because it really speaks to me. In the beginning, that's not a spoiler, it happens in the first 5 minutes. They hear Wind of Change from the Scorpions on, I don't know, radio, iPod, whatever. And his character is of course Russian and says that this song means a lot to him because it is a symbol of the fall of the Iron Curtain. And as you probably hear, I'm German, but I'm also East German, like GDR East German. And for me it's the same. The song always invokes emotion in me because it represents the fact that we ended a dictatorship essentially and got freedoms. Like, I'm thankfully young enough to only have lived through the end of it, but I know of my parents and my grandparents, and they hadn't much freedom. Like, everything they did was decided for them. So yeah, this song means a lot to people who are old enough to were born and to remember the time of the Iron Curtain. So that scene really spoke to me and probably made me bond with this character a lot more than it would have otherwise. But it really speaks to something real, and like this scene really pulled on my heartstrings in that kind of movie. But because it's like something that I also feel. And you can think about the Scorpions whatever you want. They're a bit cheesy. I've seen them live. They are like a soft metal rock band. They are not really rock stars in a sense. And you can like find them cheesy and laughable. That is okay. But this one song means a lot to a lot of people for mostly the same reason. So I really like that scene. And then it plays out. The Americans and the Russians trusting each other, not trusting each other. There are miscommunications, and I don't want to spoil anything, but then it unravels. And it's really interesting. Like, it's much more interesting than I thought from the trailer. So I would definitely say watch this movie and watch it in a cinema just for the visuals of the ISS floating above a burning Earth. That looks amazing. Of course, it looks amazing because it's a movie. In reality, it would probably be really, really bad for all of us, but in the cinema, it looks really amazing. So now comes a spoiler point. So click away if you want to watch the movie. Okay, everybody gone? Great. What I really like is the way how the quote-unquote bad people on both sides are portrayed, because I think that is how people would characterize it. Like, the Russian is very patriotic, Mother Russia, and he does whatever it takes to serve Mother Russia. So he does very unpleasant things, but he does it openly because, yay, flag waving, go Russia. The American bad guy, on the other hand, I'm not going to say who it is more sneaky. Like, he pretends to be something else and he manipulates, and at the end it comes all out. It's like kind of how you can see the Cold War era Russians and Americans. Like, the Russians, or the Soviets to be more precise, just like invaded Afghanistan and just supported rebel groups here and there, just openly. There was no secret. While the Americans used their intelligence services to sneakily fund resistance groups. So this kind of plays out in the movie, kind of like it was in the Cold War history, which I found really interesting. And of course, there are bad people on both sides. There are good people on both sides. There's miscommunication. There is a lot of mistrust, which basically boils down to the fact they are scientists. They could have just spoke with each other. They know each other for years. Like, I'm assuming that if you live on the ISS for months on months, you trust these people because you have to trust these people. So, yeah, it's an interesting movie. Much better than the trailer lets on. The lead actress isn't that good in this movie. Like, towards the end, she has a really nice scene where she is worried and scared, and that's something she portrayed really good. But in the beginning, she is kind of meh. She's just there. The other actors are much better, and the other characters are much more interesting. She is just there, and on the one hand, it is kind of makes sense because she's the new one on the station. She doesn't know anyone, so it makes sense that she's kind of bland, and the other one are fully formed characters. But she's a little let down, like not completely, but just a little bit. But overall, it's a very interesting movie. I would definitely recommend watching it. Definitely on demand in the cinema for the visuals alone. Like, that looks really amazing. Or maybe my eyes get blurry and I just think it looks amazing, but it looks really good. The ISS over the burning Earth. So yeah, you should definitely watch this movie.